Just because I believe in prayer doesn't mean I don't believe in germs and toxins.
That bottle's been opened before. You refill it at the water cooler. How often do you do that?
A few times an hour. He likes to stay hydrated.
A few times an hour? There's hydration and then there's gulping down Niagara Falls.
Now, there is nothing wrong with seeing a doctor. But can a doctor heal through the power that Jesus gave his disciples?
Gary, I think I need a doctor.
This reminds me of a case that I saw on palliative care. There was a preacher lady who a neighbour had called us about who had been bleeding rectally. When we arrived, she was anemic, unwell, and refusing all investigations, saying that Jesus was going to save her. She didn't want to leave her house, but was in agony from the pain, which is likely undiagnosed cancer. It was horrible watching this lady suffer, and eventually she did pass away, which probably at least her suffering had finished. Back to our story, it looks like our friendly preacher has spasms at the point, which could be infections like encephalitis, tetanus, or polio, which could cause it. It could be biochemical abnormalities like hypocalcemia or hypokalemic periodic paralysis. Neurological, like amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, like what Stephen Hawking had. Metabolic, like phenylketonuria or adrenal leukodystrophy, Krabbe disease. Yes, Krabbe disease is a real thing. I would immediately try to get clues of family history, full neurological exam, bloods, a CT head, and a lumbar puncture if it's safe after the head scan. Now, if this is neurological, we know it's central rather than peripheral because the spasticity that he's got is an upper motor neuron sign that you don't get with lower motor neuron disease.
God talks to him.
It's not psychosis, he's just religious. The only medical issue that showed up on the blood work is low sodium.
No, you talk to God, you're religious. God talks to you, you're psychotic.
Nice brown jacket. I've got a similar one, House. Oh look, here it is. Clearly I was destined to react to this show. It must be fate. I do see what he means though. The whole point of belief is a faith in God. If he talks to you, then it's surely cheating, right? Anyways, we get another clue. He's got low sodium. That is a low sodium concentration, by the way, not low sodium amount, which is a difficult concept to get. I used to work with a cardiothoracic surgeon who used to always give sodium supplements when a patient had low sodium, which was very wrong. And I'll explain why. The reason is if you have too much water on board in the body, i.e. hypervolemic, hyponatremia, then the solution is to get rid of excess water, not try and add salt. If you think of it like this, if you've got tomato sauce and it's quite dilute, you've just added your passata. If you try and make the sauce taste perfect while it's still dilute, once you boil off the extra water, there's going to be way too much salt left in there. So you would actually wait until afterwards to try and adjust the salt levels if there's not enough once the sauce is thickened. Similar concept. To me, it doesn't seem like the patient is dry or holding excess water, so I would assume he's something called euvolemic, which means a normal fluid status. Causes of euvolemic hyponatremia are things like drinking too much water, syndrome of inappropriate ADH excretion, Addison's disease, drugs like SSRIs, antidepressants, diuretics, protein pump inhibitors, illicit drugs like amphetamines or stimulants. Maybe our preacher needed extra energy to be able to captivate the crowd during his sermon and he decided to give himself a little extra help. Who knows?
Low sodium. Check for Addison's.
No pigmentation and potassium levels were normal.
We should monitor his saline intake to correct the low sodium. No more than 1 MEq per liter per hour. Let's push the patient history, see if there's any evidence of drugs or other delusions.
They touched on a very interesting point here by talking about replacing sodium too quickly when it's low. That is because cells in the brain adapt to a low level of sodium, and so when you increase it too quickly, water actually gets pulled out of the brain cells too fast, and so cells called oligodendrocytes actually get dehydrated, and they can lead to demyelination, which can be serious or even life-threatening. So you need to adjust the sodium slowly so the cells in the brain have a chance to adapt. Signs of this central pontine demyelination or myelinosis are things like confusion, reduced conscious level, delirium, hallucinations, and can even be fatal. You shouldn't replace faster than 0.5 millimoles per liter per hour to avoid this complication. So House's upper limit was about twice of what we would recommend usually.
Just because I believe in prayer doesn't mean I don't believe in germs and toxins.
That bottle's been opened before. You refill it at the water cooler. How often do you do that?
A few times an hour. He likes to stay hydrated.
Few times an hour? There's hydration, and then there's gulping down Niagara Falls. That bottle is 300 mils. Let's say a few times is 3 times an hour. That's 1 liter an hour. After just 3 hours, you would be literally at the level which is too much to have in a day. Never mind what you would be on a daily intake. No wonder the boy has a low sodium. That man holds more water than the laws of gravity. Speaking of which, he must be peeing like a fire hydrant. We definitely want to rule out diabetes insipidus and mellitus at this point, at that level of intake. In diabetes insipidus, ADH either isn't being secreted or isn't acting on the kidneys as it normally should, which leads to too much water leaving the body. You pee everything out quickly, and so you have to replace it with water. The actual test for it is using a water deprivation test, and I would do paired serum and urine osmolarities, as well as a early morning cortisol test, sugar levels, and CT or MRI. Head definitely, yeah, at this point.
In faith, all things are possible.
Let's go.
Lord, I call on you to relieve the suffering of your daughter,
Grace?
and make her whole again.
He's just had a complex partial seizure.
This kid is very impressive. House thinks he's reading people using intuition and advanced knowledge of body language. Chase thinks he's having a seizure. The patient thinks he's talking to God. Now he's trying to heal a terminal cancer patient he met on the corridor. I guess that's the ultimate test. Maybe she'll miraculously go into remission. If she does, did God do it? Or would she have gone into remission? Either way, kind of hard to run a randomized controlled trial to test the theory of divine intervention versus the best available treatment. You need some powerful researchers to have that drug on tap. What I'm kind of touching on is correlation versus causation. Lots of people, for example, eat apples. Some people, the day after eating an apple, get unwell. Does that mean that we should exterminate all apples, that they're somehow evil? No. This is why people's stories generally of what worked for them usually don't hold much water. Unlike this patient who holds plenty. In medicine, we call experiential evidence anecdotal evidence. And it is beneath the lowest level possible in the levels of evidence pyramid. In fact, it isn't evidence at all, as you can see by this pyramid.
MRI shows an abnormal area.
Tuberous sclerosis.
It's the right neighborhood. Accounts for all the symptoms.
All of them. Our patient, congratulations. Soon his chats with God will be a thing of the past.
House is keeping score, and he's finally gotten even with God. Will he win? He's come up against rarest cancers, genetic diseases, and tropical infections. He's on the final dungeon boss now. God. Tuberous sclerosis is a genetic disease leading to non-cancerous growths, usually in the brain, skin, heart, kidneys, and eyes. They are not curable, and patients usually live up to the age of about 30 with them due to complications from the tumors like epilepsy or obstruction. The tumors in the brain could explain the sensory experiences this patient's having, so the team want to remove the tumor in the hope that these seizures or experiences will actually go away. The condition itself isn't curable though, and the patient doesn't have any of the other features of tuberous sclerosis, so I think it's unlikely. I think they'll remove the culprit tumor, and then they'll find it was an innocent meningioma, his symptoms don't change, they start to get worse. In that case, I would wonder if he had something like Gittelman syndrome, which is a rare disorder and salt-wasting nephropathy that can lower calcium, magnesium and potassium ion concentrations with sodium. Fatigue and muscle cramps are common, and parents don't necessarily need to be affected because it's autosomal recessive. Let's see.
I took some images of Grace Palmieri's cancer. Her tumors shrunk.
Don't tell my patient proof that his delusions are true.
They've withdrawn permission for the surgery. I put the lawyers on it. Her tumor shrank.
Wow, there are hundreds of these kinds of stories out there, and no matter if you believe in God or not, you should understand that they can be so damaging. Why listen to a doctor if God has the power to save you? Why take chemotherapy that is gonna make you feel terrible and puke your guts out and make you lose your hair when prayer can have the same effect? Why plan for a 3-month prognosis when the doctors are wrong and your disease can be cured? I think you should know from the case that I gave you at the start of this why those things are actually really damaging. I totally understand why people believe these stories, but the truth is that we all have to die at some point. Whether it's God that chooses or just the randomness of existence, we still have a responsibility to look after our earthly vessels as best as we can while we have them. For that, science is our best bet. It's observable, repeatable, measurable, predictable. All things in which prayer and miracles are not, whether you believe them or you don't. Now, our patient is refusing the operation because he thinks God has placed the tumors in his mind and he shouldn't interfere. Yet he's still there in hospital. These two thoughts don't quite add up. Anyways, the team need to try and disprove her miracle. Otherwise, they lose all credibility in saying that these are delusions and he's not a spiritual healer.
His fever's 103 and rising. If we don't do anything, he's gonna be chatting with God face to face real soon.
Fevers don't come from a long-term underlying condition. He's a garden variety religious nut who happens to have an infection. It's lumbar puncture time.
Okay, very interesting. So Chase went to Miracle Woman's house while House was playing poker with her husband to distract him. All time of which we realize that Wilson is sleeping with her. Oh, the drama. Now, our patient is spiking a temperature and our initial thought of infection finally leads them to do a lumbar puncture. You see the contractions at the start could have been due to something called episiotomus, although that usually causes someone to arch their spine backwards as far as possible, creating this really tense semicircular posture. Causes include tetanus, meningitis, and trauma. Let's see what the LP shows. They're doing the investigations I said at the start, which I'm pretty happy about.
Fever could have been set off by something he picked up anywhere. Could have been a bug he got here.
Or a bug he gave here. He gave it to your patient. That's why her tumor shrank. The virus went after the cancer first.
Are you saying a virus attacked your tumor?
What? So the patient is refusing an LP because God said no more human medicine. Now we think he has a virus which targeted her cancer that he gave her. Now these things do exist. And there is even a licensed treatment for advanced melanoma called TVEC, a modified herpes simplex virus that infects tumor cells and helps the body to destroy them. They use it for patients who can't be completely cured with surgery in the US. This would be a wild-type virus though, and one of the most common that's known to affect cancers is the herpes simplex virus. An alternative is influenza A, but the patient would potentially be more unwell. But wait, if this is herpes simplex virus, then his symptoms would have to be because of herpes encephalitis and a flare of the virus somewhere. That means our pure spiritual healer may be skipping out on his vow of celibacy though. Oh man, if this is right, that would be crazy.
One of the virus types most prone to go after cancer cells is herpes.
Herpes encephalitis.
I have a gift.
Gift is jewelry, socks. What you have is herpes encephalitis.
Wait, did I just get that? Oh my god. Wait though, he doesn't have a cold sore, which is usually the most common manifestation of HSV1, which is the herpes virus that is the cancer fighting one, if I remember correctly. So if the lesions are downstairs instead of upstairs, then it would be a bit inaccurate. But give the man some encyclopedia though. His brain is shedding virus faster than he shed his vow of celibacy. Okay, that's not confirmed yet. I'm sorry.
Ever wonder why a perfect child of God should feel so desperate to purify his body that he needed to scarf down a dozen gallons of water a day?
Is he right? Take off your clothes.
There she blows! Amazing storyline. I'm so impressed how they weaved this one together. Herpes encephalitis with tumor tracking talents. I thought you couldn't surprise me anymore, House. But here I am, shocked as a baby being born. Well, nothing a little encyclopedia won't fix.
You're not going to give me my final point?
The tumour shrank.
Because of a virus.
Do you know what the odds are? She had to have the right type of cancer. He had to have the right type of virus. The exposure had to be...
She won the lottery.
You say one?
Oh, come on, House. Let God keep his points. You're all square on this one, and it is done. Another mystery solved, another life saved. Shame for our miracle woman, though. She will get worse again after the infection clears. Still pretty amazing that she got that extra bit of time. Isn't it interesting how valuable a day becomes when you know how limited they are, how much less you have? Make the most of your time. Each of us only gets 4,000 weeks of life. So if you want to know how to get the most out of them, then there's actually a book which is brilliant called 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Burkeman. You can get it with a free trial of Audible by following the link in the description below. You are supporting the channel a lot by actually signing up for that free trial, so please do. A lot of time and effort goes into putting together these videos for you, so I would much appreciate it if you could do that. And after you're done, check out a new video over here. I'm Sam Head. Stay curious, stay safe.